Welcome to TAVA Talks,
where there's real teams, real voices, and real change.
And we are your hosts, Lulu Roman
and Deanna Lynch.
Today's topic is about gun violence in our community. But first, we want to ask you, how did you hear about TAVA?
Yeah, I heard about it through Dr. Cupertino, and we connected to her through my PI at Rochester, Dr. Jonathan Leckenby. He's a plastic surgery and one of the faculty members in the department. We're wanting to start like a summer research/clinical integration program for high school students, specifically underserved minority students in Rochester. But we wanted to figure out who do we reach out to kind of help us, find students, get this together. Is the department going to be on our side? All of those different things. And Dr. Cupertino's name popped up, and then she brought up this great group that had been started last year, I believe, and said how wonderful it's been, especially to y'all, and how great the students have been enjoying it and how much y'all have accomplished. So that was the introduction. She spoke really, really highly of the group. She's super proud of y'all and everything y'all have been doing. So we're looking forward to working with y'all too.
Wow.
Yeah, hopefully one day we can meet in person.
Yeah.
So we are on the topic about violence, and it could be a negative topic. But what has been your personal experience with violence?
I'll say it's definitely probably a little bit earlier on. I feel like just in general, especially as being a minority student, a minority individual from Louisiana, it's definitely, I would say, prevalent or within my family. Not immediate. I would make sure I want to clarify that. But like close/distant family, it's kind of easy to see the impact of kind of what's happening, whether it's tough sometimes when you just come from a disadvantaged community, and you can you clearly see that impact of how it can have, especially on young Black people, especially young Black males and Black women. So I've mostly seen it through their eyes. I wouldn't say like I personally directly have been strongly impacted. I want to say, luckily, I've been fortunate enough to have parents who structured their lives and what they wanted my life to look like in a way that I've been able to avoid direct impact. But I've seen it at least for sure through like close cousins and stuff along those lines. And I mean, it's sad to see. There's so many ways that our communities have been impacted and generationally continue to be impacted from past discrepancies, and they basically just continue to be prevalent. But mostly, yeah, I would say mostly through like family. And of course, being in med school, I feel like there's times you've been at least interacted with patients and their families who've also been impacted in that same way. But it's important to empathize, but understand kind of like your position. I feel like probably more so now, I'm more so of an advocate for people who have been directly impacted by violence of kind of whatever type it may be, whether it's gun violence, domestic violence, anything along those lines.
Me personally, I haven't been involved with gun violence, but it'd be all over the news. There was actually a protest in my college at MCC. They were talking about bringing rifles into our school, and they did a protest about it. And there's been a lot of mixed emotions about it. And
how do you feel about bringing rifles or guns into the school setting?
You mean by like officers or teachers or students? Like who?
Officers, security.
I personally don't really think it's necessary.
Yeah.
I remember having like peace officers and stuff in school, at least when I was in high school. I for sure remember them. They may have carried guns, but I don't even remember back at that time. Of course, it was different from when I was in high school to what it is like now, but there are other ways to de-escalate problems. I feel like you probably need more counseling and resources targeted towards what's actually happening in students' lives, as opposed to protection in that regard. I'm not a huge component for it, but there's just better safety measures I feel like you can take as opposed to integrating a problem that's kind of already existing.
Mm-hmm.
They want it for protection, to
Yeah.
make sure we protect everyone. And I'm half and half on it. But
Yeah. There's also a question on top of that about school. Do you feel like gun violence should be taught in the school for students?
so like stop the bleed kits, how they used should be taught and how to protect yourself.
Oh yeah. I definitely think that's necessary. Again, those are like some of the preventative measures that I think can be implemented way ahead of time to kind of help alleviate some of the ongoing problems we have. But yeah, like stop the bleed for sure. Because a lot of the point of school is like, yes, you want to get through the biologies and chemistries and all that stuff, but you also want to have like good pertinent to your community life skills. So whatever you can take outside the school and apply it to what's happening around you and your household, I think that's definitely necessary. So like stop the bleed, I think is a great resource, especially when it's necessary for your surroundings. And anytime you can teach somebody how to defend themselves properly, it's for sure beneficial, whether that's they're having a mixed martial arts as like an elective you can take during high school or just some type of self-defense. I think is useful. And it's fun and it's interesting. I feel like young kids will be, willing and wanting to kind of participate in something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I definitely think the younger kids should learn this as well.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Because we actually did 2 presentations to the youth about Stop the Bleed, and they were very intrigued and interested. Like they had a lot of questions, and we asked them like, "Have y'all ever heard of Stop the Bleed?" And they said no. And
Yeah.
wow, that's I feel like it should be taught more.
Yeah, it should be taught in schools. Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's why the work that y'all are doing now is like so important. Again, it is another, not want to say easy, but it is another pathway to expose people to like healthcare professions. So it is like a useful tool, but there's also like other meanings behind it or other relationships that can develop from like the people who are coming teach it and stuff like that. So it's multi-level.
What do you think is the root cause of gun violence? I know you kind of touched on that already, with like mental health and
Yeah, again, I'd probably just go back to under-resourced, underserved in areas that are more important to be addressed as opposed to, of course, there's the legislation and stuff around the gun carry laws and like all of that. But at least I'll say when it goes back to gun violence, specifically in like young kids, I just think it's a lack of resources and a lack of availability to find something more healthier to like either have activities after school. Like I remember I was talking to a young teenage girl from Rochester. I think we were talking, maybe this was like 1 or 2 years ago. And I was kind of asking her some of these same questions, like, hey, like, why do you think the violence kind of happens in like school and like what's kind of around here for y'all to do? I think she was a junior in high school at this time. And she was like, there's absolutely like, well, again, it's one person's perspective, but she was saying like there's just not many after school programs that are like targeted and interested for us to want to do. The resources just aren't there. And she was like, that's why I think a lot of people tend to go, find other things to do with their time as opposed to finding something a little bit more healthier or constructive that can kind of help better them in other ways. So again, for me, I think it just always goes back to what's available. If it's not available, then they're gonna find something else to do. At least specifically we're talking in the construct of young kids. Now, as far as adults and stuff like that, then that gets into a whole historical background of underlying systemic things that continue to kind of go on.
When it was like a whole group of us, we did our own post. It was like a poster, and we had like different topics and different like things that children could do to like occupy themselves, like jobs, fairs, different types of activities they could do, different programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you know, people, mostly kids, can like busy themselves instead of being on the streets.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
need effective strategies for preventing and addressing gun violence.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What's y'all's take on it? Why do y'all think like what could be happening, I guess is a better question, in
I-
your opinion, to alleviate it?
Yeah, I feel like more people, especially adults, should be going out in the community and maybe really looking for the students that are having trouble
Yeah.
or any problems.
Or like events too. Like we recently went, not recently, this was back in the summer. We went to an event. It was a festival called Rock the Peace. Have you heard of it?
I don't think so.
So there was this lady, her son sadly passed away due to gun violence. I think he was 16 years old. And so she wanted to spread awareness about that. So she created her own group. It's a Rock the Peace group where they gathered a lot of people. They would go on events, like they would walk to people's houses and tell them like, oh, you could come support us. And this been going on for how many years?
For years.
Yeah, so every year on his birthday they would do an event called Rock the Peace, and all different people. Ooh, 10. I'm sorry. And like different events would come in group, and I feel like that's such an amazing thing to do because people want to make a change.
Yeah.
So every year on her son's birthday, they have an event.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's nice to see people come together and just spread positivity.
Okay, yeah. No, that's definitely nice. Yeah, I'm sorry I haven't actually heard of it beforehand.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully I can at least try to get part of it this next year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of more groups in
Mhm.
Rochester.
Like some that we never heard about.
Yes, there's so many groups in Rochester that are doing this similar work that we are doing.
Mhm.
And we try to reach out to them to collaborate because
Yeah.
it starts off in the community
Yeah,
and then it works their way up. So I
yeah.
feel like getting as much connections as possible is like the best route to take.
If we all work together, then we can have a better, more effective outcome.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You don't want too many people all individually fighting small battles, and you can kind of just come together and win the war per se.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have an interesting question, I would say myself.
If you had
50,000.
what would you spend it on to prevent violence?
To prevent violence. Yeah, again, I would truly just find the people who are currently in the community doing the work, some of these smaller organizations like yourself, and invest it right back into y'all. I mean, I've lived in Rochester now for a couple of years, but again, I'm not as connected with the community as like the people who actually live in it. So I would definitely go to whoever the community leaders are at this point, say, hey, I have this amount of money. Please invest it into the areas that you think it'll be most used at. Yeah, so that most likely be what I do. Just find the people who are, doing the work and make sure I continue to uplift them with it.
Yeah. Moving forward, what do you plan on doing, and what advice could you give for us to do?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll say at least for me, I'm really interested in like medical education and creating opportunities and pathways for other minority students to have opportunities either like similar to what I had or just in general, exposing them into other fields and careers that maybe they might not already have a direct connection to. And that's something I want to continue to do throughout my actual like career path. Um, so I know now like the next step for me after graduating med school is just to go into residency, but the hope is to continue still doing that work even through residency. I mean, we're starting a couple of things now, like I said earlier, with the program for high school students that we're hoping to start or planning to start this summer. But it's really just trying to figure out where the cracks are and hoping to fill them in some kind of way. And that's, in my opinion, that's directly impacting young students at an earlier age, giving them the opportunities, exposing them to other positive things that they could possibly be doing. So that's my whole gist, and that's what I basically plan to continue doing throughout my careers, starting at the root and then helping build them up and stay connected with y'all through the whole journey, whether that's college, whether that's you choose to go to dental school, PA school, whatever that is, until you hit your career profession, so you can go back and make sure you're doing the same thing to other kids.
I'm glad you're doing stuff like that, trying to get kids to be in that career path. Because I feel like most kids wouldn't really think of a career path like that. So I feel like having them interact and engaged in that is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's the hope. Like I said, somebody did it for me, so I'm gonna make sure I'm paying back the favor. We need, at least for my career field, we need more Black plastic surgeons. So I want to make some more, or just in general, Black career professionals. We'll keep it open. We don't want to shut them out doing surgery.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Happy to share the tips if you want to talk about it offline, but
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to TAVA Talks and being a part of our podcast journey.
And we can't wait to have you back with us on our next TAVA Talks episode.
And remember
To always say bye to violence.
violence.